The massive white ship floated silently through space, its hull marked with large red crosses that could be seen from thousands of miles away. The UCS Sanctuary was the largest hospital ship in the Coalition fleet, stretching over 2 miles long and carrying the most advanced medical equipment known to the galaxy. Dr. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the wide windows as his crew worked around him. Jake had been the ship's chief medical officer for 8 years. Now, he was a tall man with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen too much suffering across the galaxy. Behind him, his team moved with practiced efficiency. Dr. Lisa Parker, his chief surgeon, was reviewing patient files on her tablet. Captain Ron Blake, their chief engineer, monitored the ship's systems from his station. Lieutenant Amy Foster handled communications, her headset crackling with messages from across Coalition space. The Sanctuary carried over 3,000 patients from the recent battle at Proxima Station. Wounded soldiers from a dozen different species lay in the medical bays below. There were the reptilian Kratari with their thick scales torn by energy weapons, the insect-like Vespins with damaged wing membranes, and dozens of humans with various injuries. All of them were alive because of the Sanctuary's medical team. Humans had been part of the Galactic Coalition for nearly 100 years now. When they first made contact with alien species, everyone expected humans to be great warriors or possess amazing psychic powers like in the old stories. Instead, they discovered that humans were just average in most ways. They were not as strong as the Kratari, not as fast as the feline Nexari, and definitely not as tough as the rock-like Gorons. But humans had one special talent that made them valuable to the Coalition. They were incredibly good at fixing things and healing others. While other species fought the wars, humans became the galaxy's doctors, engineers, and support staff. They built the medical ships, repaired the damaged equipment, and saved the lives of wounded soldiers. The other species respected them for this, but they also saw humans as weak and harmless. This was exactly how Jake liked it. He had no interest in glory or conquest. He just wanted to help people and save lives. The bridge's communication system buzzed with an incoming message. Amy pressed her earpiece and listened carefully before turning to Jake. Dr. Morrison, we're receiving a distress call from Kepler 442b. It's coming from the civilian population. Jake frowned. Kepler 442b was a border world, close to Zephyrian space. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding aggressively for the past 5 years, conquering world after world with their superior technology and ruthless tactics. They were known for using biological weapons that could wipe out entire populations in days. "What's the situation?" Jake asked, moving closer to Amy's station. Amy's face was pale as she read the message. A Zephyrian bioweapon has been released in their major cities. Thousands of people are infected and dying. The local medical facilities can't handle the crisis. They're requesting immediate emergency medical assistance. Lisa looked up from her tablet. Dr. Morrison, that world is right on the front lines. Command has ordered all medical ships to stay in safe space until the situation stabilizes. Jake stared at the star map displayed on the main screen. A small red dot marked Kepler 442b's location, dangerously close to known Zephyrian positions. He knew the smart thing to do was follow orders and wait, but he also knew that waiting meant thousands of innocent people would die while politicians and generals argued about safety protocols. How long would it take us to reach Kepler 442b? He asked Ron. The engineer checked his calculations. At maximum speed, about 18 hours. But, sir, we'd be entering a combat zone. The Zephyrians might still be in the area. Jake walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying from a horrible... disease while he sat safely in Coalition space. This was not why he became a doctor. This was not why he joined the Coalition Medical Service. "Dr. Morrison," Lisa said quietly, "I know what you're thinking, but we have 3,000 patients on board. We can't risk their lives." Jake turned to face his senior staff. These people had served with him for years. They trusted his judgment, and he trusted theirs. But he also knew they would follow him wherever he decided to go, even into danger. "The sanctuary is clearly marked as a medical vessel," Jake said slowly. "We broadcast on all frequencies that we're a hospital ship. Even the Zephyrians respect the medical neutrality laws. We'll be safe." Ron shook his head. "Sir, with respect, the Zephyrians don't always follow the rules. They've attacked civilian targets before." "But never a hospital ship," Jake replied. "They know that attacking medical vessels would turn the entire galaxy against them. It would be political suicide." Amy spoke up from her station. "Dr. Morrison, I'm receiving another message from Kepler 442b. The death toll is rising rapidly. They estimate they'll lose over 50,000 people in the next 2 days if they don't get help." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. 50,000 lives. That number was impossible to ignore. In his years as a doctor, he had saved thousands of people. But he had also lost many patients despite his best efforts. The thought of 50,000 people dying when he could help them was unbearable. "Send a message to Coalition Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them we're responding to the emergency medical situation on Kepler 442b. Prepare the medical bays for incoming casualties and make sure our medical neutrality broadcasts are transmitting on all frequencies." Lisa sighed but nodded. "I'll prepare the surgical teams." Ron began plotting their course. Jumping to hyperspace in 10 minutes, Amy started broadcasting their medical status and peaceful intentions on every communication channel in the sector. As the sanctuary prepared to leave safe space, Jake felt a familiar mixture of fear and determination. He had made similar decisions before, choosing to help people despite the risks. It was what made him human, and it was what made humans valuable to the galaxy. They might not be the strongest or the fastest, but they cared about others in a way that many species found remarkable. The ship jumped into hyperspace, its white hull carrying hope toward a dying world. Jake had no way of knowing that this decision would change everything. He could not imagine that the Zephyrians were waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. He did not know that his act of mercy would trigger a response that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. All he knew was that people needed help, and he was going to provide it. That was what humans did. That was what made them special, even if the galaxy did not fully understand it yet. The journey to Kepler 442b would take 18 hours. It would be the last peaceful time any of them would have for a very long time. Captain Morris Blake couldn't sleep. For 3 weeks since returning from Kepler Station, he had been thinking about the strange patterns in alien warfare. Something was wrong with the official story about why humans were banned from galactic conflicts. Morris walked through the corridors of Luna Base, Earth's main military research facility. Most people were asleep, but Morris knew someone who worked late hours just like he did. Dr. Jennifer Ross was a quantum archaeologist, someone who studied ancient digital records from across the galaxy. Morris found Jennifer in her lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing fragments of alien text and images. She looked up when he entered, pushing her glasses up her nose. "Morris, what brings you here at this hour?" Jennifer asked. "I need your help with something. Can you search for records of other species that were banned from galactic warfare?" Jennifer frowned. That's an odd request. Why do you want to know? Morris sat down across from her desk. Something doesn't add up about humanity's restrictions. The aliens say it's standard protocol for new species, but their behavior suggests they're specifically afraid of how humans fight. Afraid? What makes you think that? Morris pulled out his tablet and showed Jennifer video clips from the recent battles. Look at how they fight. It's like they're following rules that make no sense from a military perspective. They take turns attacking. They avoid targeting supply lines. They never try to completely defeat their enemies. Jennifer watched the clips with growing interest. That is strange. It's almost ritualistic. Exactly. And when human observers suggested basic tactical improvements, the aliens reacted with something close to panic. Morris leaned forward. Jennifer, I think there might have been another species like us before. A species that was also banned from warfare. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, then turned to her computer. I've been cataloging ancient galactic records for 5 years. If such a species existed, there might be traces in the old databases. She began typing commands, and the holographic displays around them changed to show search results. Most were empty or showed error messages. This is odd, Jennifer said. There are gaps in the historical records. Large gaps around 50,000 years ago. What kind of gaps? Missing data, corrupted files, records that reference things that no longer exist in the databases. Jennifer's fingers moved quickly across her keyboard. It's like someone deliberately removed information from that time period. Morris felt his heart beating faster. Can you recover any of it? Maybe. Human computer systems are more advanced than what the aliens were using 50,000 years ago. We might be able to reconstruct some of the deleted data. Jennifer worked for hours, while Morris waited. As the night wore on, fragments of ancient records began appearing on the screens around them. Most were too damaged to read, but some pieces were clear enough to understand. Morris, look at this, Jennifer said, pointing to one of the displays. Reference to a species called the Void Walkers. They were apparently banned from galactic warfare for the same reasons as humans. Morris, read the fragment over Jennifer's shoulder. The text was broken and incomplete, but he could make out phrases like tactical innovation and disruption of established protocols. Keep looking, Morris said. There has to be more. Jennifer continued working, and slowly more pieces of the puzzle emerged. The Void Walkers had been contacted by the ancient Galactic Confederation around 51,000 years ago. Like humans, they had been welcomed into galactic society but banned from military participation. Here's something interesting, Jennifer said, highlighting a section of recovered text. The Void Walkers were recruited as mercenaries during a war between two major galactic powers. Recruited? But I thought they were banned. Apparently the ban was lifted temporarily because the war was going badly for both sides. Jennifer pulled up more fragments. Morris, this is incredible. The Void Walkers completely changed how galactic warfare was conducted. The recovered records painted a picture that made Morris's blood run cold. The Void Walkers had introduced concepts that were completely foreign to other galactic species. They attacked supply lines instead of fighting honorable fleet battles. They used deception and surprise instead of announcing their intentions. They targeted enemy morale instead of just trying to destroy ships. Jennifer, these tactics, they're identical to standard human military doctrine. I know. It's like humans and Void Walkers learned to fight in exactly the same way. More fragments appeared on the screens. The Void Walkers had revolutionized galactic warfare so completely that conflicts that normally lasted centuries were ending in months. Species that had fought each other for thousands of years were suddenly surrendering rather than face Void Walker tactics. "Look at this section," Jennifer said, her voice barely above a whisper. The Void Walkers didn't just win battles. They won them so completely that their enemies lost the will to fight. Morris read the fragment. It described how the Void Walkers had defeated a coalition of 47 species in just 18 months. The victory was so overwhelming that the defeated species had begged for mercy. "What happened next?" Morris asked. Jennifer searched through more recovered data. "This is strange. After winning, the Void Walkers offered generous peace terms. They rebuilt their enemies' infrastructure and tried to integrate them as equals rather than subjects." That sounds familiar. It sounds like what humans would do. Jennifer pulled up more files. "Morris, the Void Walkers were exactly like humans. They fought to solve problems, not to gain glory. They tried to end conflicts as quickly and completely as possible." Morris felt a chill run down his spine. "Jennifer, what happened to the Void Walkers?" Jennifer's search results became darker. The recovered fragments told a story of growing fear among the other galactic species. The Void Walkers had made traditional warfare obsolete, the careful balance of power that had maintained galactic civilization for millions of years was collapsing. "The other species formed a coalition," Jennifer said, reading from a badly damaged file. "Every species in the galaxy united against the Void Walkers. All of them. Why? Because the Void Walkers had changed the rules of the game so completely that the old way of life was ending." Jennifer's face went pale as she read more. "Morris, they didn't just defeat the Void Walkers in battle." "What do you mean?" Jennifer turned to face him, and Morris could see fear in her eyes. "They wiped them out completely. Every world, every colony, every trace of Void Walker civilization. Genocide on a galactic scale." The lab fell silent except for the humming of computers. Morris stared at the evidence scattered across the holographic displays. The Void Walkers had been eliminated not because they were evil or aggressive, but because they were too good at warfare. "Jennifer, if this is true, then humans are in the same position the Void Walkers were in 50,000 years ago." Jennifer's voice was shaking. "We're banned from galactic warfare not to protect others from us, but to protect the entire galactic civilization from being changed by our way of thinking." Morris thought about the recent battles with the Velox Consortium. He thought about how frustrated human observers had become watching aliens fight ineffectively. He thought about how quickly humans could end the war if they were allowed to participate. "We need to tell the others," Morris said. "Tell them what? That humanity is one tactical suggestion away from terrifying the entire galaxy?" Morris looked at the recovered records again. The Void Walkers had been peaceful, just like humans. They had tried to help, just like humans. They had approached warfare as a problem to be solved rather than a ritual to be performed, and for that, they had been completely destroyed. "Jennifer, we need to be very careful about what we do with this information." "Why?" Morris pointed to the displays showing the Void Walker records. "Because if the galaxy thinks humans are becoming too much like them, we might end up the same way they did. 5 years had passed since humans joined the Galactic Confederation. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Foster watched the war reports from his desk at Kepler Station, a human observation post on the edge of Confederation space. The news was not good. The Velox Consortium had attacked the peaceful Hendari colonies 3 months ago. The machine intelligence species that made up the consortium wanted the Hendari's rich mining worlds, and they were taking them by force. Thousands of innocent aliens were dying every day. Dan rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the battle footage again. The Confederation had sent their best fleets to stop the Velox, but the war was going nowhere. Both sides would line up their ships in perfect formations, shoot at each other for hours, then pull back to repair and try again the next day. This makes no sense, Dan muttered to himself. Colonel Beth Martinez, who worked at the station next to his, looked up from her own reports. "What doesn't make sense?" Beth asked. Dan pointed at his screen. "Look at this battle from yesterday. The Confederation ships had the Velox fleet surrounded, but they just sat there shooting at the front. Ships! They could have attacked from behind and ended the fight in minutes." Beth walked over to look at Dan's screen. She was one of the smartest military minds Dan knew, and she had been studying alien warfare for the past 2 years. "I've been noticing the same thing. They fight like it's some kind of game with rules nobody told us about." "Rules?" Dan asked. "Watch this," Beth said, pulling up another battle report. "See how the Corvalian ships attack first, then pull back? Then the Jektar ships take their turn. They're taking turns. In the middle of a war, they're taking turns." Dan stared at the screen. Beth was right. The alien fleets weren't fighting to win. They were fighting like it was a sporting event with rules about fairness and honor. "Beth, what would happen if human forces were in this fight?" Dan asked. Beth was quiet for a moment. "We'd probably attack their supply lines first, cut off their fuel and food. Then we'd hit their command ships with small, fast attacks, make them confused and scared, force them to make mistakes. And then we'd hit them from 3 directions at once while they were trying to figure out what was happening." Beth paused. The war would be over in weeks, not months. Captain Morris Blake, a Special Forces veteran who ran security for the station, had been listening to their conversation. He walked over with a concerned look on his face. "You two need to be more careful about what you say," Morris warned. "The aliens don't like it when we talk about human military tactics." "What do you mean?" Dan asked. Morris looked around to make sure no aliens were nearby. "Last week, I suggested to General Korthvar that his troops could move faster if they didn't march in straight lines. He looked at me like I had just suggested eating babies." Beth frowned. "That's strange. Moving in straight lines makes you an easy target." "That's what I told him. But he said that changing formation during battle was dishonorable and cowardly." Morris shook his head. "These aliens have some very strange ideas about fighting." Dan turned back to his reports, but something was bothering him. The more he watched the alien battles, the more frustrated he became. Simple tactics that any human soldier would know were being completely ignored. A week later, Dan was watching live footage of a battle near the Hendari homeworld. The Confederation fleet was losing badly. Velox ships were destroying alien vessels, one by one, and the Confederation commanders seemed unable to adapt. Dan couldn't take it anymore. He opened a communication channel to General Alex Carter, humanity's military liaison with the Confederation. "General Carter, this is Lieutenant Colonel Foster at Kepler Station. I'm watching the battle at Hendari Prime, and I have some suggestions." General Carter's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired and frustrated. "What is it, Foster?" "Sir, the Confederation fleet is being picked apart because they're not coordinating their attacks. If they would just—" "Stop right there, Colonel," Carter interrupted. "I know what you're thinking, and you're right, but we can't interfere. Our orders are clear. But sir, thousands of innocent aliens are dying. We could help end this war in days. Carter's expression grew dark. Foster, yesterday I suggested to Admiral Velmoon that his ships could jam Velox communications. Do you know what happened? The Confederation Council called an emergency meeting to discuss whether humans were becoming too aggressive. Dan felt his stomach drop. Too aggressive? We're just trying to help. I know that, and you know that. But the aliens see our suggestions as something else entirely. Carter leaned closer to the screen. Foster, I'm about to give you and everyone at that station a direct order. You are not to offer any military advice to Confederation forces. You are not to suggest tactics or strategies. You are observers only. General, that doesn't make sense. Why would they ask us to observe if they don't want our input? Carter was quiet for a long moment. I've been asking myself the same question. Something isn't right about this whole situation, but I can't figure out what. The communication ended, leaving Dan staring at an empty screen. He looked at Beth and Morris, who had been listening to the conversation. This is insane, Beth said. They're losing a war, and they won't let us help. Morris sat down heavily in a chair. It's worse than that. I've been studying alien military footage for months now, and I've noticed something disturbing. What? Dan asked. They're not trying to destroy their enemies completely. They fight until one side gives up, then they negotiate. Wars last for years or decades, but nobody ever really wins or loses. Morris pulled up a file on his computer. Look at this. The Corvalians and the Jektar have been fighting the same war for over 200 years. They have battles, sign truces, trade prisoners, then start fighting again. Beth leaned forward. That's not war. That's more like a very deadly game. Exactly, Morris said. And I think humans would change all that. Dan thought about human military history. When humans fought wars, they fought to win. They used every advantage they could find. They adapted quickly when things went wrong. They studied their enemies and found their weaknesses. Morris, are you saying the aliens are afraid of how humans fight? I'm saying that maybe there's a reason we're banned from their wars that has nothing to do with being new members. Morris's expression was grim. Maybe they're not trying to protect the galaxy from us. Maybe they're trying to protect themselves. The next day, Dan received new orders. All human military observers were being withdrawn from Confederation war zones immediately. No explanation was given. As Dan packed his belongings, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had stumbled into something much bigger and more dangerous than a simple galactic war. The aliens weren't just fighting the Velox Consortium. They were fighting to maintain a way of life that human thinking could destroy completely. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Dan began to wonder what had happened to other species who thought like humans. Where were they now? And why had nobody ever mentioned them? Supreme Admiral Zethkar stared at his tactical display in growing confusion. His sensors showed impossible readings throughout the human star system. Energy signatures that hadn't been there an hour ago were appearing everywhere. Behind asteroids, around moons, in what had seemed like empty space, his instruments detected dozens of hidden objects. Commander Veltar, explain these readings, he ordered. The Zolonian officer worked frantically at her station. Admiral, I cannot explain them. These signatures do not match any known technology. They appear to be ships, but they are hidden by some kind of stealth system we have never encountered. How many? Zethkar demanded. Sir, I count at least 200 contacts, possibly more. They are positioned throughout the entire outer system. General Hrax stepped forward, his massive armored form casting a shadow across the bridge. "Admiral, this changes nothing. 200 ships or 12 ships, they are still primitive humans with inferior technology." "Are they?" asked Lieutenant Creton quietly. "Admiral, if they can hide 200 ships from our sensors for 24 hours, how primitive can their technology really be?" Before Zeth-Kar could answer, the human admiral's voice filled the bridge again. This time, her tone had changed. "From friendly to something much more dangerous. Admiral Zeth-Kar, you seem surprised. Did you really think a species that survived ice ages, world wars, and its own nuclear weapons would be unprepared for this conversation? We've been waiting for you." "Fire!" Zeth-Kar roared. "All ships, open fire on the human fleet immediately." 3,000 Imperial ships unleashed their weapons at once. Energy beams and plasma bolts streaked through space toward the 12 human vessels. It should have been the end of humanity's resistance. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ships absorbed the incoming fire. Massive energy discharges that should have vaporized them instantly simply disappeared into their hulls. Then, impossibly, that same energy began flowing back, out through streams of light that connected the human ships to points throughout the solar system. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Liberty as his ship's disguised outer hull fell away like a snake shedding its skin. The primitive, military vessel the Empire had been looking at revealed itself as something completely different. Sleek armor plating emerged, advanced weapon systems unfolded, and energy shields that defied known physics activated around the hull. "All ships, drop disguises," came Admiral Sullivan's voice. "Show them what Earth's children really brought to this fight." Across the human fleet, the same transformation occurred. Every ship revealed advanced technology that made Imperial vessels look crude by comparison. But that was only the beginning. Throughout the solar system, the hidden platforms activated. What the Empire had mistaken for empty space erupted with weapons platforms, defense stations, and ships that had been waiting in perfect silence. The asteroid belt came alive with automated gun batteries. The moons of Jupiter revealed massive railgun installations. Saturn's rings lit up with energy weapons that had been disguised as space debris. "Impossible," whispered General Hrax. "No species builds weapons like these." On the Imperial flagship's main screen, Admiral Sullivan's face appeared. She was no longer smiling in amusement. Now she looked like exactly what she was, a military commander who had prepared for this moment for years. "You seem confused," she said to Zeth-Kar. "Let me explain what's happening. For 3 years we've been studying your technology. We know how your ships work, how your weapons function, and how your networks connect every vessel in your fleet." Zeth-Kar tried to speak, but Sullivan continued. "Right now, our quantum disruptors are spreading through your fleet's computer systems. In about 10 more minutes, we'll have complete control of every ship you brought here. Your own weapons will target your own vessels. Your engines will shut down or overload on our command. Your shields will drop when we tell them to." "That's impossible," Zeth-Kar said. "No one has ever penetrated Imperial network security." "No one has ever tried," Captain Amy Foster's voice added. "You've been conquering peaceful species for so long that you forgot what happens when someone actually fights back." The cascade had begun. Across the Imperial fleet, ship after ship reported system failures. Weapons turned on their sister vessels. Navigation systems guided ships into collision courses with each other. 3,000 years of technological Superiority collapsed in minutes as human programs rewrote the Empire's most basic systems. Captain Danny Brooks coordinated the final phase of the attack. All hidden platforms, target the Imperial command ships. Let's give them a demonstration of human engineering. The space around Jupiter erupted with light as massive railgun platforms fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Imperial ships that had seemed invincible moments before disappeared in flashes of energy as projectiles moving at relativistic speeds tore through their hulls. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, chaos reigned. Half the Imperial fleet was firing. On the other half, ships exploded around them as their own weapon systems turned against them. The perfect formation that had intimidated thousands of species became a trap that destroyed the Empire's finest vessels. "Admiral," Commander Veltar reported, her voice filled with panic. "We've lost control of 60% of our fleet. Our own ships are targeting us." "How is this possible?" Zethkar demanded. Sullivan's voice answered him. "It's possible because you made the same mistake every bully makes. You assumed that being big and strong was the same as being smart. You never learned to fight. You only learned to intimidate." General Hrax looked at his tactical display in disbelief. "Admiral, my assault ships are retreating without orders. Our Devastator-class battleships are shutting down their own engines." "Not shutting down," corrected Lieutenant Cretan. "Being shut down. The humans are controlling them remotely." Throughout the Imperial fleet, ships began broadcasting surrender signals. Others tried to retreat but found their navigation systems locked. A few attempted to self-destruct rather than fall under human control, but even those systems had been compromised. Admiral Sullivan's final message echoed through every ship in the Imperial fleet. "To all enslaved peoples of the Empire, humanity offers alliance, not domination. To the Empire itself, we offer this choice. Withdraw peacefully and release your subject worlds, or learn why Earth's children studied war for 10,000 years before you ever found us." Captain Jake Morrison watched the greatest fleet in Galactic history destroy itself with its own weapons. Around him, his bridge crew worked calmly at their stations, monitoring the cascade as it spread through the enemy network. "Captain," said Lieutenant Mary Collins, "we're receiving surrender transmissions from over 2,000 Imperial ships." "And the rest?" Jake asked. "Retreating at maximum speed, sir. Those that still can." On the main screen, Jake could see the Eternal Dominion limping away from Earth. Half of its weapons had exploded when the cascade reached their targeting systems. Its engines flickered on and off as human programs played with its power systems. Admiral Sullivan's voice came through. The ship's communication system one final time. "All human ships maintain positions. Let them go. We've made our point." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was smiling now, not with amusement, but with satisfaction. They had faced the greatest military force in the galaxy and won without losing a single ship. "Captain," said Lieutenant Collins, "Earth Command is reporting that human colonies throughout the galaxy have successfully broadcast our message to over 10,000 enslaved worlds. The Imperial Communication Network is carrying our transmission to every corner of their territory." Jake nodded. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. The Galactic Empire had ruled through fear and intimidation for 3,000 years. Today, humanity had shown the galaxy that empires could fall. As the last Imperial ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Jake realized why Admiral Sullivan had been smiling from the beginning. The Empire hadn't come to conquer Earth. They had come to apply for the job of teaching humanity about galactic warfare, and humanity had just graduated with honors. Conference Room A aboard the UES Liberty had never held a meeting this important. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat at the head of the long table and watched as the other ship commanders took their seats. Captain Jake Morrison sat to her right, still, looking confused about her calm reaction to the alien ultimatum. Captain Danny Brooks arrived next. He commanded the UES Defiance, humanity's newest warship. Danny was young for a captain, only 35, but he had designed most of the weapons, systems on the human fleet. His ship looked like a standard military vessel from the outside, but Jake knew it held secrets that even he didn't fully understand. Captain Amy Foster entered quietly and took a seat near the far end of the table. Her ship, the UES Resilience, served as the fleet's science vessel. Amy was brilliant with computers and had spent years studying alien technology. She nodded to Sullivan but kept her expression serious. The last person to arrive was Dr. Richard Hayes. He wasn't a ship captain, but Sullivan had insisted he join the meeting. Dr. Hayes studied alien species and had written most of Earth's intelligence reports about the Galactic Empire. He carried a thick folder of papers and looked more excited than worried. "Thank you all for coming," Sullivan said once everyone was seated. "I know you're all wondering why I seemed so relaxed when those aliens delivered their ultimatum." "That's putting it mildly," Jake said. "Admiral, they have 3,000 ships. We have 12. The math isn't complicated." Sullivan smiled. "The math is more complicated than it looks." "Dr. Hayes, why don't you start by telling everyone what we've learned about our new friends out there?" Dr. Hayes opened his folder and pulled out several photographs. "These pictures came from Probe, missions we've been running for the past 6 months. The Empire doesn't know we've been watching them." He spread the photos across the table. They showed alien ships, space stations, and what looked like battle scenes. The Galactic Empire is exactly what they claim to be. They've conquered thousands of species over 3,000 years. Their military is massive, and their technology is advanced. "That's not making me feel better," Danny said. "But here's the interesting part," Dr. Hayes continued. "They've gotten lazy. For the past 1,000 years, they haven't fought a real war. Every species they've encountered has either surrendered immediately or been crushed so quickly that it barely counted as a battle." Amy leaned forward. "What do you mean by crushed quickly?" "Most species they conquer are peaceful," Dr. Hayes explained. "Farmers, artists, philosophers, nice people who don't believe in violence. The Empire shows up, demonstrates their power, and these species surrender rather than see their people hurt." "So they're used to easy victories," Jake said slowly. "Exactly. And that's made them predictable." Dr. Hayes pulled out another set of photos. "Look at their formation out there. It's the same pattern they've used for centuries. A perfect sphere around the target planet, designed to look overwhelming and prevent any ships from escaping." Sullivan nodded. "It's a formation built for intimidation, not for actual fighting. They expect us to surrender, just like everyone else." "But we're not going to surrender," Danny said. "It wasn't a question." "No, we're not," Sullivan confirmed. "Which brings us to the second part of our situation. Captain Brooks, would you like to tell everyone about Project Midnight Sun?" Danny looked around the table. "How much are they cleared to know?" "Everything," Sullivan said. "We're past the point of keeping secrets from each other." Danny took a deep breath. "For the past 2 years, Earth Command has been working on a project based on captured alien technology. We've been building weapons and systems specifically designed to fight the Galactic Empire." Jake felt his eyebrows rise. "Captured alien technology? When did we capture alien technology?" The Empire has been watching us longer than we've been watching them, Amy explained. About 3 years ago, one of their scout ships had engine trouble in our outer solar system. They thought they fixed it and left, but they left behind some debris. We found it, Dr. Hayes added, and we've been studying it ever since. That's how we learned about the Empire in the first place. The debris gave us insights into how their systems work, Danny continued. All Imperial ships use connected networks. They share information instantly across their entire fleet. It makes them very efficient. It also makes them vulnerable, Amy said quietly. Sullivan leaned back in her chair. Would you like to explain that, Captain Foster? Amy pulled out a small device that looked like a modified tablet. Imperial ships are all connected to each other. They trust their network completely because no one has ever been able to hack it. But we've had 3 years to study their code. And, Jake prompted. And we can hack it, Amy said simply. Not just hack it. We can take it over completely. Make their ships think enemy vessels are allies. Make their weapons target their own fleet. Make their engines shut down or overload. Jake stared at her. You're saying we can turn their own ships against them? That's exactly what I'm saying. But there's a catch. Amy looked at Sullivan. It only works if we can get close enough to their fleet to establish a connection. And the connection needs time to spread through their entire network. How much time? Jake asked. About 15 minutes, Danny said. 15 minutes where we have to survive being shot at by 3,000 ships. The room fell silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. 15 minutes didn't sound like very long, but in space combat, it was an eternity. There's more, Sullivan said. Commander Steve Parker has been working on modifications to our ships. Steve couldn't be here because he's making final preparations, but I can tell you what he's done. She stood up and walked to the room's display screen. With a few button presses, she brought up a technical diagram of the Liberty. This is what the Empire thinks our ships look like, she said. Standard human military vessels with basic weapons and shields. She pressed another button. The diagram changed dramatically. The ship's outline remained the same, but the interior showed completely different systems. This is what our ships really look like now. Jake studied the new diagram. He recognized some of the systems, but others were completely unfamiliar. Admiral, what am I looking at? Quantum disruptors, adaptive shielding, and disguised weapon platforms, Sullivan explained. Every ship in our fleet has been rebuilt from the inside out. The Empire's sensors will read us as primitive vessels right up until the moment we reveal what we really are. How is that possible? Jake asked. The same alien debris that taught us about their networks also showed us how their sensors work, Dr. Hayes said. We've designed our modifications to be invisible to Imperial scanning technology. Amy smiled for the first time since the meeting started. They're going to be very surprised. But we still have to survive 15 minutes of getting shot at, Danny pointed out. Actually, we don't, Sullivan said. We just have to survive 15 minutes of letting them think they're shooting at us. She changed the display again. This time it showed the space around Earth, with small dots scattered throughout the outer solar system. Gentlemen, ladies, meet the rest of our fleet. Jake counted the dots on the screen. There were dozens of them, hidden behind asteroids, moons, and space debris. How many ships do we really have? He asked. Counting the 12 visible ones? About 200, Sullivan said casually. Most of them are smaller than what you're used to, but they pack a punch. The room erupted in surprised voices. Jake held up his hand for quiet. Admiral, with respect, How did Earth Command build 200 ships without anyone knowing about it? We didn't build them all on Earth, Sullivan explained. We've been using automated construction facilities in the asteroid belt and around Jupiter. The Empire's scouts only looked at Earth and Mars. They never checked the outer system. Dr. Hayes nodded. It's another sign of their overconfidence. They assumed that a primitive species like humanity could only build ships near their home planet. So what's the plan? Jake asked. Sullivan sat back down. Tomorrow, when our 24 hours are up, we're going to politely decline their generous offer. They'll attack us with their entire fleet, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they're going to find out what happens when someone actually fights back. And if the plan doesn't work? Amy asked. Sullivan's smile became sharp. Then humanity goes down fighting, and the next species the Empire tries to conquer will find some very interesting wreckage to study.